Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to When Tomorrow Comes. This is Iceni's regular look at the world of planning and development, bringing you the latest trends and changes going on in the development industry. This week, we're going to be talking all about industrial and logistics, focusing on the results of Iceni's recent survey and document released about the future of the industrial and logistics sector. I'm lucky enough to be joined by John Wallis, who's Development Director for Tritax. How are you doing, John?
Morning.
Welcome. And we've also got some of our Iceni staffers. We've got Matt Kinghan. How are you doing, Matt?
Hi, Dan.
Good, nice to see you. And we've got Andrew Gale. How are you, Andrew?
Good, Dan. Good to see you.
Good, excellent. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Matt, who's going to give us a bit of a summary about what was contained within our report.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. So we're really pleased to be just releasing this short report, so it's a punchy read. We sent out a survey to about 30,000 people on our readership list, and we took the results of that, and we also spoke to sort of 15 senior executives across the logistics industry, including Tritax, and I think we captured the big players. So the main messages that we wanted to put out there is really, what's the future of challenge and opportunity for the logistics sector, and the top 5 that we wanted to get across that came out really were: one is about sustainability. It's a big industry and it has a big footprint, and it's responding fast to challenges around sustainability. So there's lots happening there, and that's an important aspect to look at. A part of that is the power and the electrical needs of the industry, and particularly of the big units. How can they achieve power? The grid can't service everything, so there's a lot happening to ensure that occupiers can get the requirements. Then we looked at the issue of people. That's really central now. How in a world where automation is increasingly happening, what that role for employees is, how the role's changing to increasingly more technical, to the staffing on the floor and the drivers. So part of that is the support that the sector provides for its staff, the on-site facilities, the quality of roles, training, and careers, etc., which is really looking interesting and competitive within the employment markets. And then finally, the last message I think is how logistics interacts with the planning system in a time where we're really at peak demand and chronic lack of supply in many parts of the country. Planning is central to how the society almost responds to the need to deliver logistics, and so it's really the coal face of facilitation. So yeah, they're the big 5 messages. The report's a short one, so hopefully it's going to be useful for stakeholders across the board to kind of help think about next steps.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Matt. That's a great summary, and I would encourage everyone to go on our website, have a look at it, because it really is a fascinating read. So taking a bit of a step back from the report, it's clear that this is a massive growth industry. John, I want to fire the first question over to you. Do you think the government appreciates the importance of the logistics sector? And what can the government, both central and local, do to support its growth?
Good question to start with, Dan. Morning, everyone. The straight answer is no, I don't think they do. I think that what has amazed us throughout COVID and lockdown is how it's clear that what has happened over the past 18 months has put the sector right at the forefront of thinking in terms of really the third element of national infrastructure. Yet you look at the latest white paper for planning, and logistics and distribution don't get one single mention in a context of the use class. So the focus is all on houses as far as government is concerned, and not on logistics. So despite the amount of lobbying that we do at local and central government level, that message is still not coming across.
All right, so basically we do need to see some greater support from central and local government. Andrew, for your sort of planning work, how have local authorities been responding to the growth in logistics, both in urban locations and in more sort of dispersed sort of transport corridors?
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I mean, I guess in my experience, it's generally been a little bit retrospective. The market is moving very quickly. There's lots of advances in technology, lots of advances in what the demand for buildings in the sector need to be. And unfortunately, the planning system, as Jono says, at the national level, but crucially at the local level, is not, in my experience, is not really keeping a pace. So, local authorities need to find a way of harnessing, the growth and the investment in this sector, updating local plan policies, getting stuff lined up, so that investors and developers have confidence in where they can invest in this sector. I mean, we're doing quite a lot of work in urban areas with micro depots, which are crucial now to the supply chain, and local authorities are just struggling to promote those sufficiently, because as we all know, local communities are pretty adverse to what they see as potentially more noise, traffic, HGV movements in their urban areas. But actually, from the work we're doing, we can see the sector is working really hard to address those concerns. So, introduction of EV for delivery vehicles, on-site power, improvements in sort of build quality and sustainability. There's a very good story to be told there that could address a lot of those local concerns. But councillors, when they're making planning application decisions, need to fall back to some extent on policy as well. And at the moment, policy in a lot of areas is not sufficient. So I think local authorities need to work hard on that.
Okay, Dan, I think taking one of Andrew's points, I think one of the biggest difficulties, and you guys with your research capabilities will completely understand this, is that in all of the local plan formations, where local plans are looking at logistics, and they're looking at historical data for logistics when planning the future. And if you're kind, you have a sympathy towards them, because the industry has changed so much over the last 5 to 10 years that, what do those demand patterns like, and therefore the requirements, what are they like of the future? But the trouble is, they're not recognizing that, and they're not making an effort to take into consideration how the industry has changed to try and factor in future land and supply needs. And it is difficult, and I'm not saying it's easy at all. And especially if you look at the shift into internet purchases over the last 12 months. There are lots of figures banded around, but 5 years growth in 5 months is generally accepted, and that's a big seismic shift as to what requirements are going to be in the future, and local authorities just aren't taking that into account, and they're still looking at what is now an old industry.
I mean, I think that's a good point, John, as someone who does advise to authorities on some of these issues. I mean, in 2019, when the NPPF was updated, it did say you need to provide for logistics, but it didn't provide a method or a technique or a tool for doing that. So, lots of people providing different advice to authorities in different ways. It is challenging, and us consultants can come up with a range of figures that and techniques, but the government does actually have a responsibility to ensure that the sector's got the capacity to grow. And as you say, it's such a central piece of infrastructure to all our lives. We do need a bit of help to get it right.
So with the so how do we sell it to local authorities and communities? I mean, is it just based on the economic benefits that logistics brings to an area? Are there social benefits, environmental benefits? I mean, obviously we're talking about job creation, skills and training. But actually, what do these sort of schemes bring to local communities that we can kind of really get behind and actually use as a motivator to encourage people to support these schemes? Andrew, I'll hand that one on to you first.
Will I have the first go at that? Yeah. Well, yeah. I guess it's important to reflect on that. Obviously, a lot of the demand in this sector is consumer driven. Yeah. So it is demonstrating that a local community are going to benefit from a proper network of logistics operations in their area. So that obviously plays to things like cost savings, efficiencies, timings, etc. So a lot of it is to benefit the consumer. I think the other area that obviously our report touched on is the sustainability and the drive into a more green approach for these developments, and clearly a lot of that is driven by again by consumers and investors wanting to understand the ESG approach of developers and investors in this sector. So I think it's really exciting the way we're seeing these developments now accommodate on-site power generation, green credentials, also putting the employment element is important in terms of local employment, but not just jobs, but this is we're talking careers and investment now in facilities on site to ensure that staff have their health and well-being is considered. So gyms and breakout areas and creches are now finding their way into developments which would sort of 5 years ago would never have dreamed of probably accommodating these sort of facilities. So there is a much more rounded sort of picture that needs to be painted that it benefits the local community.
John, is that what you're finding? Where are the areas of innovation that Tritax are working on that are kind of enhancing the social and environmental offering?
Yeah, no, I think it's a really important point, and I think where we can be proud as an industry and as a business is that we're taking the lead on this compared to, for example, the house building industry, which is way behind us in terms of technology for sustainability and taking ownership of our carbon footprint. I mean, as a business, Tritax Symmetry started on a journey back into April 1919 when we decided that we needed to look at our carbon footprint in our buildings, and we at that point we joined a Gold Leaf member of UKBC, and we undertook a year's study, which the results of which were that in May 2020 we made the announcement that all of our buildings that we retain going forward would be built to net zero carbon in construction. And we've delivered our first building at the new DPD building at Bicester, where that's now up and operational, and we're very proud of that, and we're rolling that out in subsequent developments. Biggleswade, for example, where we've just got planning for about 550,000 square foot, which will be built to net zero carbon in construction. So it's very much high up on our agenda. Our ambition is to roll that out into net zero carbon in operation as well. That's obviously more challenging because it's very much how the building is operated and occupied. But as Andrew says as well, it also comes down to what energy we use, how we use it, energy generation and green energy as well. And for example, we are consistently reviewing our standard specification in light of that. We now have a commitment in our standard spec to 25% photovoltaics on the roof. We are upgrading the number of electricity car chargers that we put in on our developments on a spec basis. So it's all things like that. But I suppose the most important thing, and you'll understand it, is where is this going? And what we have to do is to provide the flexibility for change in the future, whether that's a simple point as putting enough ducts in so that we can increase the number of EV charging points. 2 to 3 years down the line, I would expect to see hydrogen powered lorries coming in. That's where that technology is going. But all of this comes into the importance of the look ahead and the flexibility that's built within our buildings.
Yeah, I mean, I guess interesting, Jono, that you've got to deliver the buildings of the future. I mean, it does put a question in my mind about the vast amount of stock that's already out there, that there's either a refurbishment or potentially a redundancy program for, hundreds of millions of square meters of existing warehouse space that's got to go through a rapid change process to deliver the kind of credentials that we need overall. So I guess that's a big item that we all need to just to keep an eye on.
Matt, I think you're completely right, and remember we're owned by Tritax Big Box REIT, which has an existing portfolio of about 32.5 million square feet, and we're working with our tenants, our customers there to work how we can improve those buildings. You know, we've got lots of conversations about energy and about putting PVs on the roofs of those buildings. So yeah, that's an ongoing conversation.
Okay, brilliant. Look, gents, we're running out of time, so I want to just wrap up with one final question, which is, where do you see the sector going forwards? I mean, what are the challenges it faces? Is it staffing? Is it power? Is it planning? Is it sustainability? And what are you doing to sort of unpick that and solve those problems? Andrew, let's start with you.
I think I'd probably talk about flexibility, because I think, yeah, we've seen through the pandemic year the sort of change in demand, and the buildings that, you know, planning permissions are hard won in this sector. So you need those buildings to be able to accommodate a range of uses. So, you know, it might be suitable for a UPS distribution facility, but equally the building should accommodate, you know, maybe a dark kitchen or an urban farm, you know. So for me, I think flexibility in sort of future use is going to be key in building design.
Okay, Matt, what are your thoughts on how the sector's changing?
I mean, I'll go on the labour, I think, because I mean, just for example, just the report I've been working on for a while was released last week for the future warehousing requirements in Leicestershire. I mean, that's looking like 20 million square feet over the next 20 years. If that comes forward in that shape, there's going to be a lot of labour requirements, and in a location which is already under tremendous pressure and competition. And obviously with Brexit, there has been some contraction in the labour force. So I think there's going to be some big challenges on getting enough people in the door at the peak times required to serve the needs of occupiers. There needs to be some forward thinking about twin track automating systems to reduce the reliance on labour, but also to make sure we've got the right people in the right places to actually, you know, supply these jobs that are essential to the work.
Okay, so it's a bit of a war on talent in the logistics sector then. Jono, how do you think the logistics sector is going to respond to that? I mean, is it going to be more canteens, more trim trails, more five-a-side pitches? What do you see?
I think that the labour cocktail within a building is ever changing. You know, I think, you know, we already have a higher. I think that the national average age is average wage is something like £23,000 to £25,000 per annum. The average wage in the logistics sector is about £3,000 to £4,000 higher than that. So it is, you know, it is a good business. It's also the fastest growing employment sector in the country, but it is a changing sector. It has a huge diversity of jobs in terms of skill sets, but, you know, as we see increased automation, there might be a reduction in sort of shop floor roles and an increase in the sort of electrical and mechanical engineering roles. So there's a big place to play in what skills do we need to work on to deliver those jobs. And, you know, we have tie-ups with Bicester Technology Studio and North Warwickshire and South Leicestershire College, and we're very proud of those, and those are very important in terms of promoting our business and promoting the industry. So I agree with Matt, a lot more needs to be done on that, but equally, you know, and again, as an immediate response to COVID, you know, we monitor unemployment figures in the areas there where we have schemes, and, you know, take South Leicestershire for example, where during COVID the unemployment for 16 to 24-year-olds increased by 180%, you know, largely because of the reliance on retail, and the logistics industry is a really quick fix to provide jobs for those people, and government needs to realise that. So yeah, it's a big issue in terms of the future. I was going power, people, place, and planning, and then I couldn't think of a P for sustainability. So I got 4 out of 5, maybe PVs, but yeah, I think, you know, Yes, the planet. There we are, Matt. Lovely. So yeah.
Okay, brilliant. That's a great summary to end with, Jono. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
That's all we've got time for. Matt, Andrew, Jono, thank you all very much for your time. Thank you all very much for listening. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.